How's it going, everyone? College Lefty, and in this video I ranked the best cards in MLB The Show 25 at each position, so let's go ahead and get right into it. And I think this is probably the toughest video to make out of any type of video that I make personally for my content. I definitely forgot a couple players in the last one when I made this tier list, and I've kind of updated it a little bit. Let me know if you disagree with any of these players in here, and then let me know which cards are your best players for your Diamond Dynasty team. But we're starting off here with the catchers. I think, the first couple cards here are maybe some platoon guys, right? Like Joe Mauer, platoon with Travis d'Arnaud. Some of these cards are better on all-star difficulty, like Kyle Higashioka. I think that this Martin Dihigo has the most value at catcher, and he has a lot of value on your team, but I wouldn't rank him as high as some of these other cards with better contact, better power, and I think arm strength is pretty important at the catcher position. If this Jason Varitek had a little bit better clutch, I think he would be in the top 3 catchers. I just have a couple guys ahead of him. But I also think catcher is kind of a weak position right now in MLB The Show 25. I had Mike Napoli at number 1 last time. I think this Ted Simmons has done a lot of damage against me, might be a little bit better. But for me personally, Tyler Soderstrom is the best catcher. If you don't like using a lefty, then you have a couple other options. And I think the top 3 guys are pretty close together in terms of how good they are. Now we're getting into some first basemen. I have the Rizzo on there. I don't think he's as good as some of these other guys, but it does seem like left-handed first basemen, guys that throw left-handed, get a little bit better animations. So I kind of ranked a couple players maybe higher than you would just based on using them so far. Like for me, Babe Ruth has been an amazing first baseman, but I'm actually using him at DH right now. But as we get into this, Mark McGwire, if you have better success with guys with lower vision, if you're playing on All-Star Hall of Fame, definitely usable. I think that Stan Musial card is really good. Also could probably throw him out there in the outfield. David Ortiz, lower fielding, but really solid card. Chase Edley, I think, is a little bit better at third base than he would be at first. I might even use that card as a DH, just depends on who you have. But I kind of put Babe Ruth at number 3. Bryce Harper's still really good. In some ways, he is better than Babe Ruth, but I would say I personally like Babe Ruth a little bit more. Of course, Gil Hodges is the number 1 first baseman. Now we're getting into second baseman. This Rap Dixon guy has some pretty good value, I think. Not the best, but I think it's important to have a good defense and good speed in your middle infield. Some of these guys I have ranked at the top just have good defense. Not really the fastest players, but like Elly De La Cruz is still a really good card, even though he doesn't have good contact or power against lefties. But I think second base is a position that is getting better. We've gotten more cards at this spot. I thought second base was a little bit light at the beginning of the year. We had a lot of cards that I thought were better playing at second base in their secondary position. But I definitely forgot DeVries in the first video. I think there are a couple guys that are still a lot better than him. But I don't know. It just depends. A lot of these cards are pretty close in overall. Some of it is personal preference. Like for me, this Christian Campbell card is a really good player. I like him in real life. He's really good in the game, but I'm hitting like 190 with him. But he does hit a lot of home runs for me. He does have some of the most home runs on my team. Tommy Edman is definitely a card I was kind of thinking about picking up. I think Mookie Betts is a little bit better than him, but if you're looking for a switch hitter, then go with Edman. Jason Kipnis I had, I think, at number 1 last time, maybe number 2. But I think Ketel Marte is definitely better, and I see a lot of top players using Ketel Marte at any spot they can. But now we're getting into shortstops. I have some of the same cards on here for shortstop, but some of these shortstops only play shortstop. They don't have any secondary positions. I think this Carson Williams card has a little bit more value at shortstop because he does get that diamond defense. But J.J. Weatherholt hits a home run against me every single time, pretty much. This Marcelo Mayer card is pretty good. He doesn't have any quirks. A lot of these pipeline cards and, I guess, prospect cards do not have active quirks. Some of these other cards might have a little bit lower attributes, but on higher difficulties, those quirks will matter, especially with the sensitivity of the PCI and kind of a penalty moving the PCI to the last frame of the ball before you make contact. Anyway, I have Elly De La Cruz in the top 10. I think this Larry Doby card is really good. I also have him in there in the outfield. They're just probably a top 10 card at every position that he plays. And I'm not really considering using, captain boosts or parallels when I'm talking about these cards. However, that will come into play, obviously, if you have a captain of the Rangers. If you're using that Ian Kinsler, then that Corey Seager card is going to be that much better, even better against lefties, little things like that. Some of the pitcher captains, I think, have added value because you can use, pitchers to boost up your hitters. I think that's pretty solid. But anyway, I have Bobby Witt at number 2, Lindor at number 1. Now we're getting into some third basemen. We got David Wright, I think, is still pretty good. Kobe Mayo is very similar to this Jose Bautista card. And I don't really know how Jose Bautista would be 3 attribute points higher. Maybe just because he has outfield as his primary. But I think those cards are pretty similar. Martin Dihigo, definitely on the list at somewhere on the list at every single position. I think that card's good. Terry Pendleton seems to be pretty good. I have never used him, but he hits well against me. I would probably rank Max Muncy a little bit higher if I was playing on All-Star Hall of Fame. Ellie De La Cruz at number 9. Once again, not a great hitter against lefties, but having really good speed and reaction and defense at third base, I think brings a lot of value to your team. We got Vladimir Guerrero, Junior Caminero, I think is really, really good at third base. Probably the second best team affinity all around in terms of value. Josh Gibson at number 5 always hits a perfect, if you know what I'm talking about. You've definitely used that card before. Rafael Devers at number 4. You might flip-flop this card with Chipper Jones. I think Chipper Jones being a switch hitter does increase his value. And I think that Devers card is still really solid. But I have Chase Headley just ahead of him. And then Jose Ramirez at number 1. We're getting into some outfielders. I didn't really know where to put Kyle Schwarber. Kind of just put him in here without a number. Maybe you put him at 30. I think James Wood has a little bit more value in terms of the outfield with his speed, even though his defense is pretty bad. McCutchen, same type of thing. Better hitter, but his defense is in the 60s. I'm really not looking to put an outfielder out there on my team if his defense is not at 60 reaction or better with about 60 speed. I'm really not looking to use that card too much. I mean, the slowest or worst outfielder that I've used this year has been Manny Ramirez, and he's made a couple plays. He does have a good arm. In the last video, I missed out on including Kyle Tucker and Aaron Judge, but I probably don't have them as high as you might on my tier list. Obviously, if Kyle Tucker's playing up on inside edge, then he's a little bit better, but his defense is terrible, and same with Aaron Judge. I don't really know why Aaron Judge's defense should be at least a 60 reaction in terms of what I think. I don't know. He makes good plays out there. He's tall. He's a good player, but in terms of the game, for me, if I'm using him on Hall of Fame, it's almost an automatic out, and a lot of times when I play people that have him when I'm on Hall of Fame difficulty, they are an automatic out, or he's an automatic out for them. We are about to get a brand new Diamond 89 overall Pete Crow Armstrong, so you could replace that card with this one. I don't have the attributes on that 89, but I think he's going to be very good. If you don't want to count that, I think this Raul Ibanez is a very good card. You might have him higher than Jarren Duran, but Jarren Duran for me has been my best all-around player on my Diamond Dynasty team. He always gets on base. He's creating runs. There are a couple guys on this list ahead of him that I might use Jarren Duran over. For example, I would use Jarren Duran over that Steve Finley, but that Steve Finley does have a really solid swing. He is a very good card and has very similar attributes. Not as fast as Jarren Duran, of course, but he does have a lot more power, better against lefties, little things like that. That I think a lot of these cards in the top 10, in the top 5 especially, are not that much, they're not separated by much. I obviously like Carlos Beltran and Gil Hodges, the 99s. Obviously, those cards have more of a separation in terms of overall and how good they actually are. But if you're using, like Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Brian Reynolds, you have a really solid outfield, even if you have Griffey. But Griffey only plays center. I think there's a little bit of added value to some of these outfielders that play more than just one position. Like Roman Anthony, to me, is my most valuable outfielder right now, because when I sub in somebody, I need somebody that can play every single outfield position when I have guys like Ted Williams and Manny Ramirez on my team that only play the corner outfield. But anyway, we are getting into some starting pitching. And starting pitching, I mentioned this in my last video, starting pitching is really up to your opponent. It depends on what they hit well, what they're good at. If they struggle against outlier, then obviously some of these pitchers are going to be better against somebody who has a tough time catching up to a fastball or an outlier sinker. If they don't have outlier and you're playing on maybe GOAT difficulty or legend, then a guy like Fernando Valenzuela can be super effective, even though he's more of a finesse type of pitcher. I think that there are some of these guys that I would probably prefer over certain guys, but like for me, in my pitching staff and how I kind of operate my rotation, I'm using guys for maybe like 4 innings, 5 innings, sometimes even less, and I'm going to the bullpen or I'm going to a second starter for the same thing, 3 or 4 innings, maybe 5 innings, and depending on what I got out of my original starter, and then I'm going to a reliever after that. But that's just kind of my strategy. I usually go into a game of ranked seasons or weekend classic with at least 2 starting pitchers that have, one with full energy, one with at least 75% energy. But I think, like, for example, Corbin Burnes I have as a top 5 pitcher in the game. If some of these other cards did not have outlier, I would have Corbin Burnes ranked higher because I think he has the best pitch mix, the pitch mix that I'm looking for. I think the slider is the best pitch in terms of, what difficulty are you playing on? If you're playing on the harder difficulties, the slider can be the most effective because it kind of shrinks the PCI. I think the sinker is also one of the most effective pitches, as well as the cutter, right? It kind of goes sinker, slider, cutter in that order for me. Corbin Burnes has all those pitches, so just little things like that. I know maybe like Corey Kluber has that as well, but he doesn't have a slider. He has a slurve, which I think the slider is the best breaking ball, just the regular slider. So as we get into some of these relief pitchers, you're going to see some guys that have 3 pitches. I think some of these guys have some extra value because of their hits per 9 is pretty much higher than every starting pitcher in the game, as well as the clutch attribute for relievers I think is super important. I had Joe Kelly on this list at the very beginning of relievers. I think he's still good. I walked him off in a game of Weekend Classic when the guy brought him in extra innings. I would never do that. He has a terrible clutch attribute. Joe Kelly is a type of pitcher that I'm only going to bring in if I have like a 4-run or more lead, but I'm going to try to get some added innings out of him. I might pitch him for 2 or 3 innings in relief, try and save somebody else in my bullpen that I would use in maybe a closer situation. Maybe some of these guys at the top of the list with higher hits in K per 9, higher clutch. You want guys like Devin Williams where I don't know where the ball's going when I use this card, and I might just throw a fastball like every single time, but he does have 125 clutch, 125 hits per 9. It can be super effective. I might use a fastball and a cutter and then only mix in a screwball like once in the 2 or 3 batters that I'm using him for. In the last video, though, I would say that my relief pitching rankings was probably the worst. I left off 2 of the top 5 relievers in the game, just completely forgot about them, and we're getting to those guys right up here. Rob Dibble, I think, is pretty good. Trevor Hoffman, I don't think I had listed in my last video. I kind of just completely missed with that one. Michael Kopech at number 3. I think this card's really good. Only has 3 pitches, but still really solid. Aroldis Chapman is my best reliever because I don't have Darren O'Day, but I completely missed on Darren O'Day. Had a screenshot of him, but when I'm going through, 150 screenshots, I'm definitely bound to miss a player or 2. So let me know if there's anybody that you think I missed. I feel a lot more confident about this one, but ranking players in MLB The Show or really any Ultimate Team or Diamond Dynasty mode is extremely difficult, at least in my opinion. But I'm just trying to help everybody out. Until next time, I'm College Lefty, and peace out.